in listen-only mode.
Good evening everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar facilitated through ADEA. My name is Rachel McEwen and I'm the Professional Officer at ADEA. Tonight the webinar is through NutriKane, and it's called A Natural Revolution in the Treatment of Diabetes, and we'll be hearing from some recent research from the team at NutriKane. Tonight's webinar is you're available to claim 1 CPD point for the hour that you have online. At the end, you'll also be asked to complete a survey. If the survey doesn't come up on the screen after the webinar tonight, just wait for an email tomorrow and you should see the survey through that email. You'll be able to complete the survey, and then we'll be able to send you a certificate of attendance to put in your CPD portfolios. You're able to ask questions at the end of the presentation tonight, so we're hoping the presentation will go for about 45 minutes with about 15 minutes at the end for some question time. On the side of your webinar panel, you'll have a questions or a chat box. Please feel free to write questions in that box as we go through, and I'll be facilitating the question and answer time at the end of the presentation. Alternatively, you also have a little hand button. If you click on the little hand button, that's to symbolise that you've raised your hand, and I can actually unmute your microphone and you can verbalise your question to the team from NutriKane if that's your preference. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Malcolm Ball, who is the Chief Technical Officer at NutriKane. He'll introduce his team and then get the presentation underway. Thanks, Malcolm.
Hello everyone. As Rachel said, my name is Malcolm Ball. I'm the Chief Technical Officer for NutriKane, and the rest of the panellists tonight are Kent Taylor, who is our Product Development Manager, Michael Stoven-Bradford, who handles marketing and customer relations, and Rafe Dickinson, who's the Senior Administrator and makes sure that everything runs smoothly. So let me just get rid of the cameras and we can go from there. Great. So as Rachel mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about NutriKane and our flagship product, NutriKane. Now, just before we start, the ADEA has asked me to make it clear that in no way do they endorse NutriKane or the products NutriKane. This seminar is designed solely to provide yourselves with our scientific evidence so that you can determine whether you think NutriKane and NutriKane is an appropriate tool for your outlook. So I also want to make it clear right from the start that we've got a number of levels of evidence that we're looking at so far, and even though I'm going to be comparing our product to things like oral pharmaceuticals and the like, we're not suggesting in any way that we're a replacement for these. We think we've got some very exciting data, and we think that that means that our products will be useful tools for an entire management regime. So first of all, I'm just going to run very quickly through the history of how we came about with NutriKane to tell you how we got here today. Then I'll follow along with an explanation of where we are with the various levels of evidence that we've got to so far, and then some quick comparisons with what's considered to be the gold standards of oral anti-diabetic medications, and then finally I'll wrap up with a little bit of where we're going and how we intend to improve the scientific rigour of our products and where we think the usage might be useful. So very quickly, the NutriKane products came about when a company that has an extensive knowledge of food manufacturing tried to make a novel dietary fibre ingredient that was designed to be a high quality replacement to things like wheat bran and psyllium husks and the like. And this product is classed, this ingredient, sorry, is classed as a food. It has a completely understood safety profile, and it was only ever really developed to be a commodity. But because they were in a new area and that they wanted to be very thorough, they did a couple of bits of analysis, and two very interesting things popped up. The first was that when people were using the product as a constipation relief, as many dietary fibres are, completely without anybody's input, they were going to their healthcare professionals and their doctors, and some of those people that were living with diabetes found that their blood glucose was coming under control. Now, this was effectively a blind trial because nobody involved had any idea that it would have that kind of effect, and it was also, the conclusion was made independently of the company that the constipation product was partially responsible. The second thing that happened was that a GI test was done on the product being added to various foods, and it was found that it had a significant impact on the glycemic index. So significant, in fact, that it appeared to be far more useful than the current theory of dietary fibre should have allowed for. So, for example, 1/10 of what is typically reported as being needed to get the change was used in the study. And the manufacturers of the product, being very good food producers but not having a lot of scientific background, asked a group of us that had extensive experience in the pharmaceutical and medical devices fields if we could have a look at the data and determine what it meant. And our initial response was, well, this is all very interesting but doesn't really prove that much. We don't know how many people were living with diabetes that we didn't see any kind of blood glucose control for because it was an uncontrolled trial, and the results for the glycemic index study had not been independently verified. So our first step was to repeat those studies, do an extensive literature search, and in the process we determined some interesting things. We've been spending the last 3 years at looking at this product specifically now, and now we've reached a stage where we're happy to discuss the findings. So the first thing that we found out when we started our literature search is actually there's quite a lot of evidence that sugarcane fibre, which is the source of this high-value dietary fibre, can be used for the management of blood glucose levels. In many cases, places where sugarcane is native, it's used as a health food and, in fact, a medicine. The problem being that it has to be extremely fresh to get any kind of benefit. We also went back and repeated the data and found that those results were valid, and so we went on to an extensive program of first testing each of the ingredients, then finding other ingredients that have reported benefits, testing those ingredients so that we could then ensure that the value that was reported in the literature was present, and then finally testing it. And so we've got a number of levels of data, some on the intestinal health and some on blood glucose management, which I'll get to in a second. But the goal for NutriKane Biomedicane is to come up with a combination of high-value ingredients to create a product which is actually can be used as a food, as medicine. So the trap that we wanted to not fall into was that many natural therapies, it's not so much that there isn't good science to support it, but the science is not very well applied. And so we wanted to force the same kind of rigor that you find on medical devices or pharmaceuticals into this natural therapy. You know, a lot of that doesn't actually apply because a lot of it is about safety data, but in terms of proving that it does what we think it does, that's the level that we're looking at, and we're partially along that route now. So if we have a look at other natural fibres that are, other natural products that make claims regarding blood glucose control, they fall into a few general categories: soluble fibre sources, antioxidant mixes, and fruit and vegetable concentrates. And the problem with these products is that they're typically highly processed, or the extracts are not actually what the science is done on. So there is some good indicative science, and then there's a number of steps which take the products themselves away from that science, and the result is products of questionable value. So really the only thing that has been shown with good scientific rigour to work from natural therapies is lowering the glycemic index of foods. So again, going through the problems with these natural therapies, often the product is not the same as the testing. There's very small numbers of subjects involved, typically 5 to 6, rarely you get 20, almost never more. When it comes to independent testing, you can't duplicate the results. The claims of the product seldom match the findings of the science, and the rigour in the trials is never very good. In order to overcome these problems or these limitations, we've taken a different attitude, and the question becomes, why do we want to look for a natural-based treatment in any case? So it's generally accepted that the medical community does not really have the toolbox it needs. The current pharmaceuticals and methodologies available work often, some of the time, work to varying degrees of success, but generally it's accepted that, you know, we're not quite there when we're trying to help people living with diabetes. It's also known that many of the medications have adverse side effects and that they can provide limited benefits given certain circumstances. They've also, with the exception of metformin, few of them have been tested for longer than 2 years, so the long-term side effects aren't really understood. And as I said, it's really agreed that there is a lifestyle solution is required. And we have deliberately tried to fit ourselves into that lifestyle solution. So we want to make our products make it easier for a lifestyle solution to be used rather than just be a head-to-head pharmaceutical. So our approach to scientific rigour, we use statistically significant monitored trials. We've just been awarded a Australian Research Council grant, which is a 3-year project with multiple PhD students in conjunction with Macquarie University. As most of you I'm sure know, the Australian Research Council is one of our highest level granting bodies, and the scientific rigour required to receive one of their grants is significant. We've also done independent clinical trials through registered firms, or at least we're starting those trials now. We've done independent pre-post blinded trials. We've got a number of practitioners which are verifying the results themselves, using the product in their regime and independently coming to the conclusion that we have provided benefit. And of course we've got a lot of anecdotal data from end users, though we value that as indicative rather than useful. So just to list a couple of the trials that we've done so far and looking at in the future, the Royal Melbourne Hospital has just completed a trial looking at intestinal health. Those results are about to be published in peer-reviewed journals. As I said, we've got a number of medical practitioners who have looked at the product in case studies, fitted it into their own programs and found that it provides benefit above and beyond their normal program. And these people control all of the aspects of the trial. We don't influence them in any way, and they have come to the conclusion that it has benefit. We also do independent analysis. So one of the big problems with natural therapies at the moment is that certainly in the food world, there's no real requirement to prove that what you claim is there is still there. So a lot of the claims for nutritional benefit from products come from historical analyses, and that's just simply not good enough for us. Every time we look at a batch or look at a new ingredient, we test it, we make sure that it's contaminant-free, we make sure that if we're using it as an antioxidant source, those antioxidants are measurably present, and so on. And we back everything up with independent analysis to confirm our findings. So where we are at the moment with blood glucose management is we are at the end of our small-scale trials. We've had very good results, but the number of people that we've seen so far have these results is quite small, and so we need to expand our total number of patients. And if we were doing a pharmaceutical trial, that trial would put us in the phase 2A, just the start of the phase 2B level. So good proof of concept, good proof of potential results, not up at high numbers of individuals yet. So this is just a quick table to list the strength of what we've found so far and make some notes on it. So in terms of intestinal health, it's very well established. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people have used it. Hundreds of papers have been published on the benefits of total dietary fibre and of high-quality dietary fibres as opposed to just functional fibres or highly processed fibres. And the product's been used for several years for this kind of a benefit. So when we're looking at the value of the ingredients, again, it's very well established. The characterization of the micronutrients, which I'll go to in a second, is well done. There's lots of scientific literature that says that these ingredients are important, and there's strong scientific acceptance for the mode of action. Where we're still at the early stages, the specific benefits of the product that we've created so far, NutriKane D. So all of the ingredients put together in the format that they're in. We've got small-scale studies which have produced very positive results, but we're still in the low numbers. We're in the tens to hundreds, not the thousands to tens of thousands. We have had the results independently confirmed by healthcare professionals, as I say, but again, they're in very small numbers. But importantly, the product is classed as a food, and there's been no significant adverse events reported so far. As foods have been used for long periods of time, we've deliberately picked hypoallergenic foods to make sure that the risk of adverse events is very low. And as I said, the scope of the benefits has not yet been established. So let's talk about the active mechanisms, or the proposed active mechanisms. First and importantly, the level of bioavailable chromium is very high. It's been shown in independent clinical trials to be at a level which produces improvements in insulin sensitivity. As I said, in clinical trials, it's also been shown to be at levels which provide some benefit to all individuals, not just those that have living with diabetes, but it has been specifically shown to have improvement in insulin sensitivity with type 2 diabetes. It has a very high concentration of polyphenolic antioxidants, which have been shown in a number of scientific papers to be important to oxidative stress. It's also been indicated in blood glucose management and other morbidities associated with high blood glucose levels. It's got a number of bioavailable carbohydrates and waxes, so it's not just insoluble fibre, it's also hemicelluloses, waxes, and resistant starches are included now with other ingredients. And so many of those have been reported to have a positive effect on blood glucose control. And it contains a number of high-quality dietary fibres, which has been shown extensively to have benefit. It's also been shown now, again, quite early stages, to have a proven prebiotic effect. That's part of what the ARC grant is looking at. So the ARC project, one aspect of the project is to look at the inflammation response. One aspect of the project is to look at the microbiome effect, or the intestinal health effect, and one is to actually characterize the components as best as we can. So we've got starting to get evidence that it has a good prebiotic effect, and we've also got evidence that it has an anti-inflammatory effect. But really what we're proposing here is that it's the combination of all of these effects which have such good clinical outcomes. So many of the clinical trials have shown that you need very high levels of antioxidants or dietary fibres and that kind of thing to get clinically observed results. And then when you go back into the real world, these just isolated molecules don't have that much of a benefit. However, there's a lot of evidence now that says that if you take a natural product that has all of these things put together in the right amounts, you need much less of each of the components to have the effect. So some good examples are red wine versus purified resveratrol, whole fibre juices. CSI just very recently released a number of papers showing that if you include the fibre in the juice and essentially keep the whole vegetable or whole fruit, you get much higher levels of benefit than if you take the highly processed juices. And then, of course, the big fibre debate is, well, is it dietary fibre alone, or is it the fact that vegetarian diets high in vegetables give you added benefit as opposed to just using isolated dietary fibres? So just, I'm not going to go through this now, but here's just a list of the suggested representative references. I should have made a note right at the start that what I'm presenting to you here is a short summary of our full evidence pack. Our evidence pack is available to anybody who's interested to have a look at it. It has all of our references. These are just some that give you a starting point. The evidence pack is several hundred pages, so it's a little bit hard to present in sort of 45 minutes. But it's available for anybody that is interested to look more deeply into what I'm presenting here tonight. So, what benefits have we observed in our early stage analysis, and what do we hope to see further on down the track? So, again, these are largely case studies, small-scale trials. We've tried deliberately to have them in a lifestyle environment. So one of the reasons why we're still quite cautious about promoting the actual benefits is what we've done is there's a lot of papers at the moment that suggest that clinical trials are all well and good, but when you give it to people in a real-life situation, the confounding factors eliminate the benefits observed in highly controlled trials. So one of the things that we've done is gone to our trial subject and said, we don't want you to be rigorous with your diet, we don't want you to be rigorous with your exercise, we want you to do whatever you're doing with your healthcare professional, keep doing what you're doing, and just include NutriKane into that regime, and we'll see if you've got a benefit. So we look at how good their benefits were before they started, we look at what happens when they start trialing the product, and then we look at what happens once they go off it again. The problems associated with that is that because we do have a lifestyle trial and there's a lot of confounding factors, it's very hard to single out NutriKane as being the reason for the benefit. And we're not claiming that it is. We're claiming that the benefits are improved if NutriKane is one of those components. So what we have seen, though, is very exciting. So we've seen the potential to reduce glycogen levels at higher levels than those reported for pharmaceuticals. We'll go into that a little bit more in a second. It is a safe food-based treatment, so it doesn't have the same regulatory issues. It doesn't have the same adverse events associated with it. All of the oral pharmaceuticals have adverse events associated with them. One of the things that we've always said to people is the worst case scenario is you get more fibre in your diet. It really is that simple. Minimal side effects, so just so that we're clear on our definition, in this case I'm using side effects to describe a unwanted effect that comes from using the product as directed. So there are cases where if you take it not as directed, you can cause problems. If you eat too many apples, you'll get a stomach ache. If you take 15 doses of NutriKane, you'll also get a stomach ache. But if you take it as directed, the side effects are minimal. It does provide complementary health effects. Metformin has been shown to have positive effects on weight and cardiovascular disease, but most of the oral pharmaceuticals don't have any benefit other than hyperglycemia control, and the product is natural, so it's not classed as a pharmaceutical from a regulatory point of view. So again, it's been shown to provide blood glucose management potential for a wide range of people, so it's not just people living with type 1 diabetes. We've got small-scale trials with type 2 diabetes. We've got small case studies with people living with type 1 diabetes that also see the benefit. We've had individuals with polycystic ovary syndrome resulting in insulin insensitivity And we've just recently got some results from people with just insulin insensitivity, metabolic syndrome, finding improvements as well. Not only high blood glucose levels, but also low blood glucose levels, so it seems to normalize things, cholesterol and blood pressure. But these are all, again, very early stages, and they've only been observed in some individuals, not in all individuals. And as we discussed, it contains multiple modes of action. So just as a quick table of comparison, let me just run you through. So this, I should say that all of the figures that I'm quoting here for oral pharmaceuticals come from peer-reviewed scientific journals, and I'm also not suggesting that these are necessarily doctor regimes. These are what have been found in clinical trials. So obviously, if something's not working very well, a doctor or a healthcare professional will change up the regime, do different ratios and inclusions of medication to get the optimum effect. This, what I'm quoting here for oral pharmaceuticals, is just what's been found if you do a clinical trial. What we found on our side, again, these are small-scale studies. These are observed results. They are scientifically valid results, but what they are not is statistically significant results. So when you're comparing these two things, just be aware that what we're proposing for NutriKane is indicative rather than the basis for any kind of claims. So if you look at the oral pharmaceuticals, generally you see between 0.1 and 1.6 percentage points improvements in HbA1c levels. Some papers claim as high as 2, but generally they don't go above 1.6 points. Usually you don't see a drop for people with extremely poor blood glucose control. That's not entirely true now. There was a paper published this year that showed that certain combinational therapies will get greater improvement for poorer control. So what I mean by that is that if somebody's HbA1c is 9, it will, and you use an oral pharmaceutical, it will still go down by 1 to 2 percentage points. And if it's 7.5, it'll go down by 1 to 2 points. Whereas we've found that with the individual, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why it keeps advancing these. We found with individuals that the worse off their HbA1c levels, the more immediate and the greater the improvement. So we've there's well established that for oral pharmaceuticals that people start to habituate to them, so there's a reduction in effectiveness over time. We've seen no reduction in effectiveness over time. In fact, the individuals that we've had using NutriKane over 3 years still find improvements after 3 years. And as I said, most of the oral pharmaceuticals go beyond 2 years. We're up to 3 years and counting now. This is just a quick table to compare the various groups. Again, please, this is just indicative from our point of view. And these numbers are just specifically what's been found in clinical trials. So you can see that in the cases of the various groups, some of them actually cause an increase in HbA1c levels in individuals, whereas obviously that would not be continued in a medical situation. However, we have never seen an increase in HbA1c levels from an individual that has started taking NutriKane. And this is just a summary of all of the various oral pharmaceuticals compared to NutriKane. So just to list some of the side effects, obviously I'm sure everybody's aware of these side effects, but some of them are quite serious, and there's even now quite a few papers discussing whether or not the seriousness of the side effects reduces the value of the products. So we've had very few side effects associated with our products, and they've been very mild. So if people have very low fibre diets to start off with, and they go straight onto a full dosage regime of NutriKane, they tend to get slight bloating or feelings of fullness. If they then wean themselves onto it, in almost all cases, that problem goes away. The only situation where we're seeing any kind of significant problem is that if the individual using the product has ulcerative colitis, their intestines are just so compromised that they just can't seem to take the fibre of really of any description, not just NutriKane. So just to continue with the comparisons, you find that oral pharmaceuticals generally have a limited benefit to type 1 diabetes. There are some papers that claim that they are very useful, some papers that claim that they're not useful at all, and their use for people living with type 1 diabetes is quite controversial. We've observed benefits to both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Want to make it clear that we are not a pharmaceutical, we're not a pathway forcer, so taking NutriKane does not, or has never, sorry I should say, resulted in cases of hypoglycemia, and in some cases has actually reduced the number of hypoglycemic events for individuals that have been taking it on a regular basis. The effects of oral pharmaceuticals on digestive problems are very well documented. Unfortunately, it's one of the major negatives associated with metformin. Even though metformin has a lot of very good positives associated with it, we actually improve the health, and improved digestive health is something that we have very good evidence for, and we're very comfortable with suggesting that it will have that benefit. And then we've talked about the synergistic benefits with disease factors and anti-inflammatory effect and so on. So just to summarise who we've observed, or what types of individuals we've observed to have benefits using NutriKane so far. People with type 1 diabetes have reported being more able to manage their blood glucose levels with fewer hypoglycemic events. Again, this is very small scale. We are not at all comfortable with suggesting that NutriKane would reduce hypoglycemia, but we are quite comfortable with saying it won't increase it. We've done work with people that are managing their type 2 diabetes with diet. We've done work with them managing type 2 with oral pharmaceutical agents oral pharmaceutical agents and diet, and we've had quite a bit of success with people that are using insulin for their type 2 diabetes because they've become so insulin insensitive that they have to supplement with artificial insulin. So we've also found that NutriKane works very well as a complement to these traditional treatment regimes. So we found improved benefit when using diet control and exercise. We've also found that in many cases the individuals have been able to reduce their pharmaceutical levels or their insulin levels just because they appear to be working more effectively. And we've had reports from the individuals that are trialling the product that they just feel like things are more under control, and that's quite an important outcome for us, and we're quite pleased about that outcome. NutriKane also has the potential to be used for related conditions. So I want to be clear again that what we're stating here is that NutriKane has proven so far, or been observed so far, to have good control over intestinal health and blood glucose management, and so that means that there are a number of conditions such as pregnancy, metabolic syndrome and aged care where not strictly related to diabetes but more related to just good overall health, you can see some benefits. So where do we go from here? So as I said before, we're very comfortable with the idea that this may help. We've got good evidence that it has helped people. We've used scientific methodology. We've done pre-post trials. We've tried to eliminate any placebo effect by comparing to other products. we've used blind trials, but we just haven't got the numbers that we need to really express good scientific levels of claims, and that's where we want to go. It's our ultimate goal to be able to put our hand on our heart and say we have done the same efficacy trials as you will find for any pharmaceutical, and we have proven these benefits beyond a shadow of a doubt. So in order to do that, we're working with the Royal Melbourne Hospital. They've already trialled the product for intestinal health, and this is the trial that will be submitted, has been submitted for publication and will be published early next year. We're now working with them to go back and have a look at blood glucose management. They observed a change in blood glucose management, but there were too many confounding factors for them to be comfortable that the change was associated with NutriKane. So we're redesigning the trials and re-expanding the trials so that we can have a look at that data and get a statistically significant outcome. As I mentioned, we've done the Australian Research Council grant under the ITTC program, which is a training funding. This is one of the very high-end grants associated with the ARC, and that's been going for 12 months now. A lot of our antioxidant data and our prebiotic data has come out of that trial, and we expect to get some very useful results out of that over the next couple of years. We've started our physician-moderated trials, so these are the lifestyle trials that I've been talking about. We haven't got large enough numbers yet to be able to start doing statistical analysis on those, and that's why we're continuing those, expanding those all the time so that we can produce a large enough cohort that we can look into the various subgroups of people trying to manage their blood glucose levels and also get statistical data. We're looking into small-scale trials to determine the cohort size and things needed for such inflammation-related conditions such as Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, various autoimmune disorders. Obviously, each one of these projects is huge and will require a large number of subjects and a scientifically rigorous program, and so we're trying to partner with people that can handle these kind of levels because we simply don't have the resources to do it ourselves, but it's very important to us that these questions get answered, so we're finding partners to do that with at the moment. We're also expanding our clinically significant trials. As I said, we want to get statistical data. We want to have a look at the possibility of being able to reduce hypoglycemic events. We also want to have a look into the possibility that we can act as a complementary agent to pharmaceuticals. So at the moment, the only data that we have is that when doctors are treating or working with individuals, they've found that they can reduce the amount of other agents that they need, so either oral pharmaceuticals or excuse me, or insulin, but we haven't got a large enough cohort yet to say what percentage of reduction can be done, under what circumstances can reduction be done, and is the reduction statistically significant and observed across the board. And we're very interested in doing that, so but obviously we'll need to work with one of the larger pharmaceutical companies to do that. And we're still at the stage of working out what is the relationship that will have the highest chance of providing significant data in that regard. So just very quickly before we finish up, I want to talk about how we've attacked using the product with individuals so far. I want to make it very clear that we are research scientists. We are not doctors. We are not medical doctors, rather. Some of us are scientific doctors. But we want to make it clear that because we have seen the results that we have, it's really important that this is done in collaboration with healthcare professionals and that any changes should be made under their supervision. We do not recommend changes of any kind. We just know that it won't do any harm, or at least there's very little chance that it will do any harm, and so it's something worth looking at. So we've tried to make it easy to use. Initially, our studies were using a product which was not very pleasant to eat, and so compliance was very low. Even people that came back to us and said, look, I'm 100% convinced that it works, wouldn't take it, so because it was just uncomfortable. And so we've made it easy to take. We use natural orange flavour and some potassium bicarbonate citric acid to give it a little bit of fizz. It can just be mixed with water. To get the best results, it should be taken with a meal, because then you get the GI lowering effect of the meal. However, it's not essential that it be taken with a meal. We've shown in our time course studies and our dosage response studies that the benefit, the observed management improvement works for about 12 hours. So the important thing is that the product is taken as close to 12 hours apart as possible. We generally recommend breakfast and evening meals. With the majority of people that we've dealt with, we found that that worked fine. Because it's not a pharmaceutical and there's no chance of overdose, if you forget it, you can take it at any time. It doesn't matter. As I said, you can't overdose, but it's a food. It's not a defined milligram quantity having a defined outcome. So some people benefit from having more doses during the day. Some people take it even 3 or 4 times a day, but also some people find that they only have to take it 1 a day and still get the benefit. One thing that's happened quite a lot with our long-term users is that they started off taking it twice a day for 12 months. They found that after 12 months they only had to take it once a day to get the benefit over the whole 24-hour period, and then after about 6 months again, they had to start taking it twice a day again as the benefit eased off. So as I said, it should be used under the supervision of healthcare professionals. We recommend that, in order that people can determine for themselves that the benefit is real, that they take all of their measurements of indicators before they start. As I said, there may be an easing in period where you use less than 1 dose at a time, particularly if there's very low fibre diets involved. And what we've seen in the past for users is that postprandial blood glucose starts to stabilise in 1 to 5 days. Fasting glucose levels start to normalise within sort of 1 to 3 weeks, and then the other long-term indicators start reducing over a longer period of time. That changes a little bit between individuals, but certainly that's fairly consistent over the people that have been trialling the product so far. And as I said, NutriKane normalises metabolism, we believe, and the effects are varied. For people that are wildly out of control or the poor responders, as we've been working with, we find that the results tend to be more immediate and more pronounced. And then some people where they're almost under control anyway, have almost optimised their management, so might be in the 7.5 region for HbA1c, for example. It might take 3 to 6 months for them to see any kind of reduction, even though they find other positive indicators like improved intestinal health and improved feelings of well-being. And we've just very recently had early stage data with some individuals who failed a glucose tolerance test, and their other indicators suggested that they were moving into the danger zone for diabetes, been on the product for using the product for several months, gone back and redone a glucose tolerance test and insulin sensitivity and the like, and found that it was improved. But that's very, very early days, literally months old, and only a few individuals. So we're very optimistic, but certainly wouldn't suggest that it we've got enough data to say that that's going to be an effect that's going to be observed often. So thank you for listening. I hope that that's provided you with certainly the summary that you need to decide whether or not this is a technology which might be of use to you. As I said, we have a full evidence pack that we're very happy for anybody to look at. We'd love to have comments and critiques on where people think we should go and what level of evidence would make them comfortable that we're getting some outcomes. We're 100% committed to being ethical and scientific in all manner, and we want to bring the rigour associated with pharmaceutical and medical device development into this area. We also have a number of products in the pipeline to improve on or work on slightly different things, but those are all too early stages for us to talk about now. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Malcolm. We've got a few questions for you, and if you and the rest of your panel would like to turn cameras back on so people can see you, and I'll direct the questions to you, Malcolm, but if the others would like to jump in, or if there's someone better suited to answer the questions, just turn your microphones back on. So I'll just go through some questions that we have as you were going through your presentation. It appears that the studies regarding blood glucose management are still in early stages and low numbers. So how can the product be recommended for people with diabetes at this stage? Isn't it a bit too early?
Certainly the product is in early numbers and early stage, and the reason why we're suggesting that it can be trialled with individuals is because we do have this very well established intestinal health benefit. So there's a lot of things associated with diabetes that aren't about blood glucose management. You know, diabetes, as everybody here is, I'm sure, aware, is associated with increased incidence of all sorts of intestinal related conditions, and also the fact that a lot of the medications that people are being prescribed cause intestinal discomfort. So yes, we absolutely agree that we're early stages for blood glucose management. The results have been exceptionally positive. Of the low numbers that we have, we've seen in the order of 80% improvement in, 80% of people have seen some kind of improvement in their blood glucose management, but that's not the entire picture. So to go back to the original question, we're not necessarily suggesting that this is something that should be prescribed as such. It does have to be part of your total management regime. It is a part of your lifestyle choice, and there's no downside to giving it a go. It's not like you're going to see adverse events or anything like that occur if you do include it as part of your regime. So you may observe some benefit. That's where we are at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Many of your references are very rats and mice. In other words, not in line with the lifestyle approach that you are wanting for your current trials, and many are quite old. Any comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, that's true. Unfortunately, a lot of this work done to date has been on animal models, not just rats and mice. There's also been a lot of work done on dogs and cats. Dogs were the traditional animal model used for most of the diabetes pharmaceuticals before they got into human trials. So we're reasonably comfortable that those trials are good indicative trials. Certainly a lot of what's been published is on animal models at the moment. That's why we're working with people like the Royal Melbourne Hospital. They've got a very good record of good clinical trials. The investigator that was in charge of the trials that are just about to be published is very well respected, very very high-level researcher, as well as being a medical doctor and the head of the recuperative care group. So, yeah, I mean, again, what we've got at the moment is very good literature to suggest that we've got something which is worth investigating. We've got trials with humans and with individuals which are indicative that it's something that could be useful for a lot of people, but we don't know what percentage of people it's going to be helpful. That's really where we are. Our scientific limitation at the moment is we can't comfortably say, well, this is going to help 80%, this is going to help 10%, this is going to help 5%. And that's why we're doing the trials that we're doing at the moment. A lot of the trials are still ongoing. The reason why they haven't really been presented here is because they are still ongoing, so they haven't been published yet. But that's also why we've been quite deliberate in making sure that the trials that we do are lifestyle trials, because we want to be able to translate this large body of published data to lifestyle outcomes, and particularly the chromium stuff. There's a huge amount of human clinical trial data done on the positive effects of chromium on blood glucose management. There's also a lot of human data on the fact that bioavailable chromium is very hard to get into your diet. So if you look at the commonly described sources of bioavailable chromium, vegetable sources, things like broccoli and bananas and stuff like that, the amount of chromium that they have in them is very low and much lower than what you can find in the literature as being necessary to get those kind of clinical outcomes, whereas the amount of bioavailable chromium that's been found to be present in NutriKane is of the order of what has been shown in these human clinical trials to have a positive effect. So that's really the strongest piece of human data that we have at the moment.
The next question, or comment, I guess, if you'd like to comment on this, the participant has read the evidence pack and there's no evidence to suggest that the product is likely to outperform medications in management of glucose levels.
I'm not sure that the participant is confusing the evidence pack with our summary of evidence. The piece of data the thing that's been handed out for general usage is the summary of evidence, which is about 20 pages long. The evidence pack we've got is about 300 pages long, and very few people have actually had a look at that, is the first comment. Again, when we're talking about the possibility of outperforming, and outperforming it, I guess, is not the right word. We are suggesting that this is something that will work well in conjunction with the products which are already out there. We're not suggesting that it's a replacement at all, and so outperforming may have been not the right word. What we've found so far is that the evidence that we have, we've got changes which are at least comparable to what's normally reported for anti-diabetic medications. And if the individual would like to contact me directly about what they have seen in the evidence pack that they don't agree with, I'd be very happy to talk to them in person. But I don't think it's something that I can really answer in this format because I don't know what their specific objection is.
And they've just written back and said, yes, it is a summary pack, so she'll get on to you and get the full pack, if that's all right.
Oh, absolutely, of course. And as I said, we're not we want to make it clear we're not pretending that we have more than we've done so far. We've got good indicative data. We've got very small numbers at the moment. We've got very good data that it's good for intestinal health. And we've got a small amount of data that it will improve a number of other things. And so we've been very careful. One of the reasons why the evidence pack isn't widely available is we've been very careful that people don't misconstrue the claims that we are making. We'd much rather people think that we're claiming too little than claiming too much, because we've all worked in this field for a long time. We're very well aware of the fact that we're in a space where there are a lot of people that make claims that they can't support, and we want to be very careful to make sure that we don't fall into that category. So please have the participant contact me directly, and I'll talk to them about the evidence pack, or anyone that has any questions.
Will do. So with the indicative results, can you provide more detail on the types of diabetes of the participants, their duration of diabetes, treatment regimens, numbers of participants?
Sure. So the acute studies that were done on just postprandial blood glucose control, they were only very short-term, largely based around glycemic index trials. The studies that we've done over the longer term, the lifestyle studies, they typically go for a minimum of 3 months. So what we do is we take individuals that have reported having troubles managing their blood glucose levels to practitioners. The practitioner flags them to us that this is somebody that the practitioner would like to trial on the product. So they get all of their regular checkups, HbA1cs, kidney function tests, all of those kind of things. They're then supplied with a logbook that records the amount and type of food, amount and type of exercise. They do that for a week without taking NutriKane, so that we can get a baseline, and we make sure to run them through the fact that they shouldn't be changing what they've been doing over the last period, so that we've got something to compare it to. They then use NutriKane as part of their regime for, part of their day, I guess is a more accurate way of putting it. Take it twice a day. In their day, log their blood glucose levels the same as they would under any circumstances. Log their insulin if they're taking insulin, though most of the people that have been on the study so far haven't been taking insulin. And then we get the results at the end of three months, have a look at changes in HbA1c levels, other indicators. A big part of it, though, is actually the doctors themselves and the patients themselves come back and saying, well, yes, this was a factor that was involved. As I said, the problem with trials of this kind is that there are lots of confounding factors, and we don't have anywhere near the number of patients that we need to be able to say that these figures are statistical. So we're not claiming that at all. What we have found is that the rate of improvement, we've never had somebody get worse, and the rate of improvement has been very high. The number of patients that have gone through this kind of the number of individuals that have gone through this kind of a process is probably in the 30-ish. We're recruiting more people every day. We want to get it up to the point where we can say that each subgroup has a statistical number of people, but the truth is that this kind of a trial, because there's no placebo control, because we're not comparing it directly to anything other than what they were doing before, in real terms, we wouldn't be able to present this as a clinical trial or anything like that. That's not what it is. The trials that we've done with the hospital, everything's been controlled. So the diet's controlled, the amount of exercise that they do every day, and that was 100 people for the intestinal health. We're going to have the same number of people for the blood glucose control. We haven't done that data yet. We've only got indication that the result has been positive. We haven't done the statistics on it, but in terms of improvement in intestinal health, we had statistically significant improvements for all of the parameters that were tested, and we do have a summary sheet of those results, but we're not allowed to talk about the paper directly because it has been submitted for publication. So as soon as it's published, which will hopefully be January, February next year. Well, of course, it'll be included in our evidence pack, but we can provide the summary at this time. So that's definitely meets all of the scientific requirements of a clinical trial and will be published as such.
I've just got one last question because I realise it's 7 o'clock. So it's got two questions in it. Is NutriKane actually on the market yet? And if so, isn't it a bit soon? As it sounds as though there's still a good few years away from having publishable evidence in peer-reviewed journals that is specific to people with diabetes, for example, and not bowel health. And how long might this take to have those published specifically for people with diabetes?
Okay, so let me answer that in two parts as well. The first part is yes, the product is commercially available at the moment for intestinal health, and the websites, you can look at that, and I'm not going to discuss the product here. This isn't the forum for commercial products. In terms of the second part of the question, that's also got a few parts to the answer. The first part is quite a bit of the core data, as we discussed, has been published in peer-reviewed journals. So again, the levels of chromium have been published in peer-reviewed journals. There's large-scale clinical trials that have shown that chromium levels of the level that we have proven to be present in the product have shown benefits to blood glucose management. So a lot of the basic science is well published and well established. In terms of specific, has this product been published in journals? We're looking to publish continually over the next couple of years. The first papers will be out probably middle of next year, I would guess. We've already got the data recorded for the stuff from the hospital trials. We've just got to do the statistical analysis and that kind of thing on it, so that publication will be reasonably quick. Some of the trials that are underway at the moment, they'll be ready to be published probably the end of next year. And then, of course, we've got the underlying science, so the inflammation responses, the microbiome responses, all of that stuff will be published on an ongoing basis, and will start to be published probably middle of next year as well. So in terms of is it too soon, no, I don't believe it is too soon, and that goes back to, again, we're not actually claiming that anybody who tries this product will see blood glucose benefits. And to be fair, that claim can't be made about any of the current oral pharmaceuticals. These things have been studied for tens of years, and there's still no guarantee that giving metformin will lower the blood glucose levels of any individual. You have to try it and see if it's going to work, and that's all we're saying for this as well. Try it and see if it's going to work. The difference between this and the oral pharmaceuticals, and one area where it will outperform them and is well established as being a problem for them, is it won't cause intestinal problems. It will improve intestinal problems. It won't cause the other side effects that are associated with it. It may do nothing. I mean, we're not, as I said, we're not saying that it will absolutely help anybody involved. We're saying you're at the stage where, as a practitioner or as a individual yourself, you can give this a go, give this a try, and it may provide benefit, but it won't do any harm, and it has other health benefits which are well proven associated with it.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Yep, that's great. We will finish up there as it's time. This session was recorded, so it'll be available on the ADEA website. If you came in late or joined us late, you'll still be able to watch the beginning of the session at a later date. So thank you again to the panel. We'll sign off. Don't forget your surveys to complete, and we look forward to more webinars through ADEA in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Good night.